Hi, I'm Nathan Pierce from Family Protection Ministries. Today we're going to talk a little bit about how to get information about bills or legislation here in the state of California. How can you look up a bill and read what it says and find out what the status of the bill is? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get started. To begin, we need to go to the website that the legislature uses for updating people about current legislation. So we're going to go to leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. That's leginfo.legislature.ca.gov. And these links will be below the video. So starting at the LegInfo website, we come to the welcome page with information down here about a quick bill search. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in a bill number. So for this point in time, we're going to just put in 123. AB 123 comes up, as well as ACR 123, as well as SB 123. We're not going to get into the different types of bills or the process right now. We're just looking up status. So for now, we're going to look at AB 123. The subject, it tells me right here, is Early Childhood Education, Child Care and Development Programs. The author is McCarty. And right now, it's telling me that the status of this bill is that it is in the Senate Education Committee. Now, if I want more information on this bill, because I know that it's an AB, an assembly bill, I know that since it's gotten to the Senate Education Committee, that means it's already gotten through the committees it needs to go through in the assembly side and is already over in the Senate in the California State Legislature, because things have to go through their House of Origin before it can go into the secondary house. So in this case, this bill is an AB or assembly bill, and it's got to go through the assembly before it can go to the Senate. It's already done that because it's telling me that it's in the Senate Education Committee. So let's take a little bit further look by clicking on the bill number, and we can go through some information here. To go into more detail, you can read the bill. It initially comes up with the actual bill text in a way that they show the amendments since the last version of the bill in blue. The additional wording is in blue. The wording that they're taking out since the last amendment is red, and it's got strike-throughs on it. The new wording is blue and it's italicized. So that's how you can tell what the changes are since the last version of the bill. Now this bill, as you can see here, it shows the bill was introduced December 3rd, 2018. Now we can see up here at the top that it's been amended several times. It was amended in the Assembly March 26th of 2019. It was amended again in the Assembly April of 2019. Then amended again in April, just a week later in April of 19. And then again, it was amended in the Senate. After it's gone through the Assembly, it's now over in the Senate, and it's been amended on July 7th of 2020. So let's take a look. What other details can we learn about this bill besides reading the latest amendments? Well, we can find out what the votes have been in the past. That's under this tab. Tells us what the history of the votes that have taken place on this bill, how each person voted. Then we can look at the history, all the different actions that have taken place as it's gone through the political process here in Sacramento. Next, we can look at the bill analyses that have been written by each committee that the bill has been through, as well as if it gets to the floor of a house, so where every assembly member or every senator votes on the bill, that house actually does an analysis called the floor analysis. So we can look at those analyses here in this list and find out what committees said what about each bill. Sometimes this information is helpful in the committees because you can download these PDF files and find out, this committee is actually recommending certain things to be done to the bill. They tell you a summary of the bill. They tell you the background or the existing law, the need for this bill, the analysis of this bill, and they'll even tell you some of the history of other bills that have been introduced that might be similar or relate to this current bill you're looking at. Now, you might look also under staff comments or a similarly titled section where it talks about amendments. Sometimes when a bill goes into a committee and it's about to be voted on, you'll see that an amendment is being recommended either by the committee or by the author, and they are going to discuss those amendments in the committee. Sometimes you can read the whole text of the amendments in here in the analysis, or you might just get an idea of the amendments in the analysis. In those committees, when the bill comes up for a vote, you might see the author at the very beginning of his presentation say, "I accept all committee amendments." That would be if the committee has in their analysis said, "We suggest that we adopt some changes to this bill." And if the author is okay with that, which his bill is much more likely to get passed through that committee if he does adopt those, then he can just say, "I accept all these committee amendments," and they move on from there. If they want to discuss them, sometimes they debate them there in committee. Sometimes the author will just say, "No, that these amendments that the committee is proposing just completely undermine the whole point of my bill, and I'm not going to accept them at all." Usually, if that happens, they don't pass the bill. So other things you might get out of the analysis of the bill is toward the end, they usually list the organizations that support or oppose the bill. So in this case, this bill, AB 123, is supported by a number of organizations. And as far as they could tell when they wrote this amendment or when they wrote this analysis, there was no opposition listed. That means that nobody sent a letter to the committee telling them they opposed the bill. So when you are writing a letter to take a position on a piece of legislation that's about to go to a committee, it's appropriate to send that letter to your own legislator, but you also need to make sure that you send it to the entire committee that is going to be voting on that bill, as well as, so each member of that committee, you would want to send the letter to the offices of the members that sit on that committee. You also want to send the letter to the committee office itself, because that's how you can be guaranteed that your letter will be listed here in opposition. Usually, they don't list individual people's names here. They will just say one individual or several individuals or many or numerous individuals, but they list out the names of organizations that oppose a bill here on the analysis. So let's go back and take a look at the rest of the LegInfo site for basic information about bills. So that was a little bit about analyses. Let's take a look at today's law as amended. If you look at a bill and how it works, you can take a look at our other videos on the anatomy of a bill. But a bill as it's amended has changes to the previous version marked in either italics with a blue text perhaps for new wording, and strike-throughs and perhaps red wording for the wording that's being taken out since the previous version. So if you have a bill like AB 123 that has many versions, and you can see all the versions right here, and you can actually look at each individual version, you're going to see amendments and changes to the previous version, but you're not going to see how it actually changes what's in the law today. So in order to do that, they created this version called Today's Law as Amended, and you can actually look at this bill, this version of AB 123, and see, well, how does this bill, AB 123, change the law as it stands today? So this bill, you can see there's a lot of black text here. That means that is not new wording. That's what the code says today. The red wording with the strike-throughs indicates wording that they're proposing to take out of the current code, delete it, and the blue wording indicates wording that is being added to the code as it stands today, the law in California. So these colors right here indicate changes to today's law. That's why it's called today's law as amended. So it's showing you what's in the code today for the section that is being dealt with. And it's showing you what changes are being made or proposed to the current law. Very helpful tool. Next, we can go over to compare versions. You can say, okay, how does today's version compare to this? Perhaps the last version you happen to have read was the March 26th of 19 version, but you missed reading the two different April editions of this bill. So now you just want to compare today's version to the March version because that's the last time perhaps you did an analysis on it. You can do that by clicking here and saying compare versions, and it shows you how it compares, what are the changes since then. Again, the blue is new wording, and the red is going to be wording that wasn't in the previous version. So there's been some significant changes to this bill, as you can see over the last couple of years. Let's go to status next. Status shows you where this bill stands today in the legislative process. Right here we can see if we look at this bar across the top, we can see the things on the bottom here. It went through the assembly. It's gone all the way through first committee, second committee, second and third reading on the floor, and it has passed the assembly. So it passed the floor in the assembly. Now it's over on the other side. It's in the Senate side. Remember, it's an assembly bill. It had to go through the assembly first. Now it's in the Senate. It's gotten through its first reading in the Senate. That means they read the number of the bill on the floor of the Senate to all the legislators, and then it got assigned to a committee. Now it's sitting in its first committee. It has not had a hearing yet. So down here we can see specifically where it is. It says committee location, Senate Education. The last amended date it tells us was the 7th of July of 2020. It's in the Senate. We knew that before. And then we can look further down to see a little bit more information. It says it's in committee process. That can mean a number of things. You'd have to call the committee really to know exactly what the situation is. But since this bill hasn't actually been heard, actually we can see down here, it says last year it was, we can see some of the history actions that we saw on the history tab earlier, but then right now, July 7th, it was from the committee chair with author's amendments. It says amend and re-refer to committee. That means that it's in the Senate Committee on Education, but they have decided to work with the author on this bill to change the bill. They're amending the bill, and then they're going to bring it back to the Senate Education Committee. So that's what re-referred to Committee on Education means. It means send it back to the Committee on Education. So the Committee on Education is working with the author. They're sending it to the floor where you have to make the amendments, and then it's going to send it back to the Committee on Education. So there's a process of amendments, and we see that that amendment from the 7th does show up here, so we do have the most recent version of the bill available. Up here you can see as well the different authors of the bill, the main authors and co-authors of the bill. Then you can see the topic listed here. As well, you can see where it says the 31st day in print. Now, why do we want to know that? The reason you want to know when the 31st day in print is because when a bill first gets introduced, it has to wait for 31 days before they can take any kind of action on it. That means a bill can't be amended, or it can't be passed through committee. It can't be voted into law or signed by the governor or anything. It can't make any of that movement until it has been sitting there for 31 days for everybody to see it. Now, in California today, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, except that there's a bunch of dead time in the early part of the legislative process for a lot of bills. The point behind this was that it would be given a chance to be reviewed by people before it got passed or voted on in committees or on the floor. Today, that doesn't mean quite as much because they can still put a bill, they can introduce a bill, and then later amend the bill very quickly and vote on it very quickly after the fact. And things get voted on, signed into law pretty quickly later when they're amended, and people don't have very long to review them. This does happen quite a bit in California, and so the 31 days doesn't apply to when an amendment happens. That would be nice. It would slow down the process a bit and make it so that they would have to think more seriously about each piece of legislation in California. But that's how that works. Next is the Comments to Author tab. If you do create an account with the LegInfo website, you can put in your email address, create a password, and then you can submit letters through this site directly to the author. The other option is you can just email the author's office or call the author's office and ask, who should I send a letter to? And usually they'll tell you who the person is working for that author's office that is assigned to handle letters relating to that bill. It's really, very, very important to make sure that you're getting your letter to the right person. So often we write letters to legislators or to their staff or to a committee and don't get the letter to the right person. You want to make sure you're being effective and get those letters to the right people. And in different situations, that person might be different. And so I would recommend, if you're sending in a letter on a bill, to make sure you're getting that letter to the right person by calling the legislator's office first and asking who you should send that letter to. All right, so this is the LegInfo website. We've gone through and we've seen a number of things about how you can track a bill and get information about it. One other thing that's kind of interesting to look at is that you can see over here on the right-hand side of the LegInfo website, it has daily updates, daily files. There's a lot of information under the daily files. And then you can get to the video archive pages for both the Senate and Assembly. I would encourage you to check those out. Another thing is down here under Quick Bill Search, you can actually look and see by clicking on this Go button without putting a number in how many bills have been introduced so far this legislative session. There's a lot of them. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching.